Karishma, I am so happy to have you here today. I know you really well, and we've known each other for a while now, but I know that you're getting into, or you have gotten into deep into nutrition, and you have a lot of interesting, ideas about it, and how it kind of affects chronic diseases or just overall health and immunity. So it was really important for me to have you here today and for you to share your thoughts on the same. First, before we start, it would be really nice, because what you do is very interesting. So it would be really nice if you could tell us a little bit more about, your work and what you've been doing so far.
Yep. So thanks so much for having me. And I think you're doing something amazing as well. And it's interesting how both of our work, where I work in sports science and you with the other end of the spectrum, apparently with illness, but the common ground here we found is nutrition. So I've, since we last met, I was in Bonn. I did my sports science degree at Bonn. Before that, I have a neuroscience and a psychology degree from Melbourne. So I've got a good understanding of human behavior, psychology, neuroscience, and I wanted to work in the space of elite human performance, which is why I did sports science. So I started a bit of work in sports science, and working with athletes, I always thought I'd be in the peak of how the human body works and work with the human body at its best. But over time and over a lot of research within sports science, I found that, well, it was a shocking belief or shocking learning on my part that athletes aren't actually healthy at all.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. Yeah.
And we always think that that's the epitome of health. And there are athletes who are exercising and working out and doing everything as per the book, as per what we define as the Bible of health. So if you look at Tim Noakes, who is a sports scientist, he himself is an athlete, a marathon runner, and has been running marathons and training for marathons for over 20 years. And all the athletes he worked with have been doing the same. And cut to 20 years later, most athletes develop type 2 diabetes, which goes against what we would normally believe in about health, right? Why type 2 diabetes is supposed to be a disease for people who are lazy and eating too much and not working out. And a lot of the questions that were asked at elite sports science levels have now given us so much insight into what is really causing health and ill health. And it's not related to movement. It's basically the answer lies in food and nutrition. Mm-hmm. So that's how I found myself into nutrition. And what I've found is that, and I truly believe, and I found myself working in people's kitchens in spite of being a sports scientist and wanting to be on the sports field with the athletes, is that what you put into your body will define whether you are healthy or unhealthy, right? So whatever nutrition you take in, that is going to define your state of health. Now, whether you are an athlete, whether you are a diabetic, whether you are a recreational athlete, whether you're just a normal person, day-to-day corporate job, the only common factor that defines healthy or unhealthy in all these categories is what nutrition you are putting into your body.
Okay, wow, interesting. But tell me something, because see, that's a really interesting point that you brought up, because yes, the epitome of health for all of us has been, an athlete. So what went wrong? As in, like, is it just because their bodies require extreme amount of, they have to push their bodies to that level that requires that kind of nutrition? And how much of an element does nutrition play in overall health and exercise?
So nutrition is fuel, right? That's what nutrition is for the body. Mm-hmm. So if you view the body as it is basically a hybrid car, where you have an electrical engine and you have a petrol engine, right? And the human body can work on these two types of fuel. Now, if you look at evolutionarily, what was preferred was I'm going to reframe that. If you look at ancient man, and that's where we get all our theories from, because our DNA has not changed, but our environment has. Yeah. So how did man survive? What fuel was man living off when food was not available 24/7?
Right, yeah.
If you look at the hunter-gatherers, they were hunting, getting a feed and living off that food for maybe a day or two and not getting food every few hours, right? That's how we've evolved to survive. So in order to keep the human machine alive, the body has evolved a mechanism of being able to use stored fat.
Okay.
That's the role of fat in the body.
Keep you sustained over a longer period of time.
Keep you sustained in between your meals.
Right.
So that's its role. It's not there to make you look chubby. It's not there as an enemy. It's there because when you don't get food for a while, which is how the body's made, to be you burn fat as a fuel. So fat is actually the primary source and the preferred source of fuel for the body to run on. It is the correct way for the body to actually function, and it is the cleaner fuel for the body to work on.
Okay.
But what happens is that in our current environment where food availability is really high, we have no shortage of food at all. In fact, we're getting an excess of food. We're eating food too much. We're eating very calorie dense foods, and the calories are coming from a carbohydrate source. So yes, fat has calories, but we're getting calories from carbohydrates. So what is happening to the body is it is automatically switching into the other engine, which is your petrol engine. This petrol fuel engine was only around for emergency situations. So when man had to run from a tiger to save his life, you had this immediate, really powerful energy stored in your muscles and your liver that allowed you to just bring out that energy to save your life. That was the only reason it's there. It's not a permanent source of fuel. So imagine the petrol as, if you will, as a urgent, emergency, life-changing fuel that you only need for maybe a couple of minutes, or if you're trying to do that final chase and that final run to save your life. That's the only useful function of it there. But what we have done to our bodies is that for years, since the time we were born, some of us, I'm 33, some people up till 60, they are only eating 3 meals of carbohydrates per day, which is telling the body, we have carbohydrates around, so use carbs as your primary source of fuel, right? So now you're living on this petrol-based fuel. When it is around, the body will never switch to electric energy because it says, I have this immediate energy around. It's easy to burn. It's very easy to use. Why should I switch to the backup energy? I don't need to go into backup. I have immediate energy around. Which seems fine theoretically. But if you imagine your petrol, the fumes given out from burning petrol, they are dirty fumes. There's oxidation. There's a lot of chaos happening in the body every time you burn that as a fuel. It's not supposed to be a permanent fuel. It was there for you to go from 0 to 100 in a second. It's not there for you to live off every time. So the inflammation that is given off from burning carbohydrates as a fuel constantly is what seems to be the basis for a lot of disease.
Okay.
Right? Also, additionally, when you're living on a carbohydrate-rich diet, every time you need to digest, anytime you ingest carbs, insulin spikes, right? And whenever insulin spikes, you have your fat storage for some time, doesn't allow you to burn fat when you've got high insulin in your body, then insulin comes down, then again you eat, again you've spiked insulin. So we're living in a world where in our blood there is constantly high insulin, right? Throughout. Now, when there is high insulin, it is telling your body that, okay, we have a lot of energy around, we burn high energy. We have the energy, we burn high energy. Eventually that rubber band snaps. And that's what is diabetes. When you have a metabolism that's supposed to be regulated and switching between two different types of fuel, but you're only using that one really high potent energy constantly, it's an elastic rubber band. One day it's going to snap. And that's the moment it snaps is when your insulin just stops working. Your cells don't respond to insulin anymore. They're saying you're always around. I cannot attend to this. They adjust. And eventually they stop responding to that signal. So that is diabetes, and that is the basis of a lot of disease. So the diabetes comes from the insulin snapping. But a lot of the basis of cancer, a lot of the basis of what's happening with athletes is that it's coming from the high amounts of inflammation from consuming a high carbohydrate diet.